first of all, I have to ask Loren if he's feeling psychologically safe. So without that psychological safety, we're in trouble.
With you, always, Dave.
Pretend nobody's here. By the way, Jonathan, if people have questions, and if they could write them down somewhere and collect them, we'd be happy to respond to questions from the group. So if you're feeling psychologically safe, I'm feeling mostly okay. Just looking at Amy makes me feel psychologically safe. So I know I need that. Welcome to HR. How long have you been in HR now?
Almost exactly a year.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is pretty much my anniversary.
You know, this could be an annual event that every year you come back to the HR Congress. Give us we got from Jonathan a quick synopsis of your history, but tell us some of your background, and then let's talk about what it's like to come into HR from the outside.
Yeah,
so
great.
Give us some background.
Well, maybe first I'll share the reactions when I was appointed into this position. So about 50% of the people who knew me and knew my story and where I found meaning said, "Congratulations, this is great for you, this is great for Lego." The other 50% were wondering whether I got pseudo-fired and moved out of my chief commercial officer role.
And which 50 were you in?
I was very pleased. So it didn't happen by accident that I've ended up in this role. I, like many leaders, have become very attuned and interested in, as I've grown in the organizations that I've worked in, always in commercial or marketing roles, I started to realize probably about 10 to 13 years ago that I needed to rely less on the technical skills to deliver results and rely much more on social skills, on self-management, on EQ, social management. And I became quite intrigued by that change. And also I noticed that the meaning that I was deriving from developing people, developing teams, helping people to achieve their potential was far greater than just hitting the sales numbers, just beating the competition. And that led to an exploration around different modalities, concepts around leadership. I got into coaching and did a bunch of certifications in coaching, have been interested in mindfulness for many years, and started to apply those principles in my leadership role. And that ultimately led me going back to school to do an organizational psychology degree at INSEAD, where I have my MBA, and started to send signals already at Google that I may be interested in making the transition. And I was always curious about, can I have a bigger impact in a senior commercial role and being, let's say, conscious or people or culture orientated, versus sitting in the HR seat and maybe hitting the organization at an even bigger scale.
Nice. By the way, in the audience, how many wish Loren was your manager? So you had people.
By the way, it's a bit early for that.
You just
need
convinced,
a few more questions.
And I have a feeling you're going to have a Harvard case study on you very soon. But how many? I mean, what a remarkable background. What is it that triggered you to begin to see the connection between the, quote, soft stuff, the social, the empathy, the people side, and the outcomes of the business? What triggered that connection?
Well, I think it was a few things that kind of converged at the same time. In the late 90s, I started to do some personal development work, so psychodynamic work, and just tried to get a deeper understanding of who the hell I am and what my parents did to me. And how
Would you like to talk more about that?
I think I've dealt with all that stuff.
By the way, I've got to laugh. My wife is a psychologist, and she's created in the basement where we live a therapy called sand tray, where you create a kingdom in sand and you make sense out of it. She said, I'm the only one of her friends who refuses to do it.
Oh.
Because I'm not sure I want to go there.
But she could probably read you anyways by now.
She can read me anyway. So you did some of the personal work.
So I did a lot of personal development work, self-awareness, self-reflection. And then I found myself in a particularly difficult business situation.
Was this at Google?
No, this was at Nokia. This was my first general management role I was in Taiwan. It was a very poorly performing business. It was kind of the basket case of the organization. And it required a complete rethink of not only what we should focus on from a business, which products to sell, how to go to market, which customers to focus on, but a complete rethink about the talent in the organization, the leadership, the culture, what kind of organization. And I didn't feel very equipped. You know, I was educated in all the
So what did you get from your, and I don't want to mock any other firm, because everybody has their own background, but what did you get from your HR people then that helped or didn't help? What would you have liked? What did you get?
Oh, at the time, very limited support. So at the time, actually, I got a lot of pushback because, you know, I was a relatively young general manager. It was a very poorly performing business, so it required dramatic change. The HR leader was there for probably 20 plus, very high tenured, very traditional. So I got a lot of, no, you can't let go of this person. No, you can't let go of this many people. No, you're not going to be able to find this type of capability in the market. No, you're not paying attention to the Taiwanese culture.
That must have driven you nuts.
Well, actually, I think, you know, the more no's I got, I actually got more determined that I was going to make something happen. But
That's really
yeah, it wasn't a very supportive situation from an HR perspective.
But instinctively, as a manager, you saw that the soft stuff, the talent, you had three things that I like, talent, leadership, and culture, were the hard things. They were the things that were not easy to build this transformation.
Exactly.
By the way, let's finish your story. So you went from Nokia, you went to Google, you came to Lego, you were the commercial lead, doing all these innovative things, getting your MBA from INSEAD, getting your psychology degree. What else about your story should we all just be inspired by?
Oh, that's a difficult question. Without trying, you know, obviously not being boastful, I think I've been super lucky that I would say that Google really opened my mind to not only creating the context where I felt I could explore my technical role and deliver business outcomes, but Google was such a psychologically safe and open environment that you could explore any interest you had. So I had interests in talent development through coaching, and there was no coaching program. So I found four other Googlers who were interested in coaching. We developed the program, we piloted it, the results were good, then we got funding, and you know, the whole thing ended up going.
Are the four still there?
Pardon me?
Are the four people still there?
Three of them are still there.
That's impressive.
But the program has grown into this big global program.
Super.
So I think that gave me the permission, the environment, the culture at Google gave me the permission to explore these interests on top of just having to focus on delivering the business results.
You know, what I hear when I hear your story is an incredible passion for success. I want to win, I want to succeed, as defined by marketplace. An incredible curiosity and inquisitiveness, almost this, let me try some things, and then a very real personal side. Now, by the way, I'm inspired by your story. I've told this with both of the master sessions. Here's the challenge. Your story is inspirational, and people can leave today and say, oh, that guy Loren, I wish I worked for him. He's terrific, he's great, he's going to help Lego succeed. Our job in the panel for the next few minutes is to help the hundreds of people here create their story. Because while your story is inspiring, it isn't the impact if I'm an HR person in a firm in Belgium or France or Spain. When you came into HR, what did you do to help people create their story? What did you do to help people? You're inspiring, we get that, and we, amen, we love you. But how does your skill set help other people create their story?
Yeah, well, I think it happened a little bit by accident and a little bit by design. Because one of the first things that I was just sharing this story with someone outside, but one of the first things I noticed in the first 2 months of actually joining the HR organization was that it was a completely different paradigm and a completely different mindset than the organizations that I've come from, commercial and marketing. And the main distinction was that HR including my direct reports, the whole organization's paradigm was deeply institutionalized was governed by deeply institutionalized annual processes. Whereas when you grow up in the business, you are it's hourly, daily, weekly. You're out there fighting to deliver value to customers or to consumers. You're getting immediate feedback. You're responding to those feedback. So the cadence and the rhythm and the pace is completely different. And
That's really
as I noticed that, my team also reflected to me after 3 months. They felt the way they expressed it was they feel like they need to take a deep breath in our meetings after every agenda topic, because simply the pace that I was bringing about, okay, well, what are we going to deliver? When are we going to get results? What are we going to learn from it? How do we move on from there? I mean, it wasn't something that I pre-planned.
Yeah. That's really
just how I've been wired. And then we started to explore what can we do to enable the HR organization, because you hear all the time HR needs to be focused on the customer, outside in. You're a great advocate of that. But it can't happen unless the tools, the processes, the data that HR is working with start to mirror to a greater extent the tools, processes, data, and rhythm of the business.
What I like a couple of things that you said. I like a lot of what you said, but actually what I heard is deeply institutionalized process yearly, DIPY. HR was DIPY, which is probably not a good acronym. But you wanted to change not just an activity, but a mindset. And you wanted the HR mindset to be equivalent to the business mindset. How did you make that shift happen? How are you? Well, that's unfair. You've been there a year. It's probably not all the way happened.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
How do you go about changing that DIPY mindset?
Yeah. No, and I think you're right. I mean, we're on a journey. I think, first of all, the team responded incredibly well. And by increasing the cadence and the bias to action, it started to energize the organization, because they felt they were delivering more and having a bigger impact. But some things that we decided to do, some of these are very simple, but we have a monthly town hall with all HR personnel and some other functions who we work closely with, like shared service. And we spend the first 15 to 20 minutes of that call, I run through the business. Okay. The business KPIs, the customer KPIs, and that's something that never happened. So it's like you were talking about in the workshop before. They used to look at a so-called HR dashboard, which had attrition, how many temporary workforce, time to hire, useful data, but secondary data to the primary data, which is the business outcomes.
So, by the way, I'm now trying to translate into how do I, sitting in the audience, get impact? One, I should be able, here's a test. Would I be able to do a 15 to 20 minute summary of where the business is to an HR group or to a business group? Obviously, you're commercial, you can do that. And again, I don't want to bemoan anybody else, but what % of the HR people you've run into could do that? A 15 to 20 minute overview of the business.
Oh, I think less than 10, 15%.
Yeah.
I think those who directly support the commercial operations are closest. Yeah. But I think it's challenging, because even what I've noticed as I've transitioned in the role, I'm starting to lose proximity, even with 20 plus years of commercial experience and running the sales organization. I could look at the numbers, make sense of it, but you lose proximity. So I think HR professionals need to literally force themselves into the right conversations, into the right rooms, into the right meetings, including interactions with customers and consumers, because the business won't pull HR in.
Yeah. By the way, when you were at Google or at Nokia or now at Lego, and an HR person said, "Could I come to that meeting?" what would you have said?
I think at Nokia, in the situation that I described before, I'd say no way in hell, because I'd be very worried that that style, that really old school process driven.
Okay. Because they're not going to add value.
Would not add value. At Google, I think it was very different.
What would you hope that HR brings when they come to that meeting? So at Lego, you're in the senior management meeting. What is our HR unique contribution to those conversations? What do we uniquely bring?
I would say that our unique contribution, and also the angle I try and bring now when I visit customers, is do our teams have the right capabilities to deliver what the customer is asking for?
Nice.
And, because there's plenty of people in the room that could ask the good commercial questions and what kind of marketing programs do you need, and that's good context. But I think HR can sit there with the lens, also inquire around, are we delivering? Are we hearing what the customer is asking for through the lens of capability and culture and talent?
You passed by something that I think is really cool. Do you still make customer visits?
I still do, yes.
With marketing, sales folks?
Yeah.
So how do you say to them, hi, I'm from HR, I'm here to help? By the way, you don't say that.
No, I usually say I spent a lot of, well, I know them because I used to.
Yeah, but how do you get access to those visits? Because those must be, even today, very telling and informative about what you can do then in HR to build the capability of the team and the people. How do you get into those visits?
Yeah, well, I think I'm lucky in the sense that, the teams know me, and then many of the customers know me, but independent of that, I explain that what my purpose is to the commercial leaders.
Good. What do you say?
That I want to go and help you evaluate whether your team, whether you have the right capabilities, systems, and process to deliver what the customer is asking for. Because they tend to be super focused and very often super tactically orientated to just deliver what the commercial ask is. We want a bigger discount, or we want more access to this particular product.
In our research and truth in advertising, I had the privilege, Loren attended a program at the university. So I had the privilege of spending a couple of weeks learning with you and from you. Thank you for not going to Harvard. We need folks at Michigan. That was
That's a great program. So
say that again. I didn't hear. But I think it's fascinating, two things that you just alluded to, and I'm going to try to distill those so I can transfer learning. One, to build credibility through the relationships. People knew you, they trusted you. Some of that's because you were commercial, some of that's who you are as a person. But all of us in HR, if we're going to get access to those meetings, we've got to build, we call it being an incredible activist. We've got to build a relationship. We've got to build trust is a big word. They know you're not going to throw somebody under the bus. You're here to help, literally. And number two, when you do the customer visits, you're not going to do something stupid. I mean, you're going to really listen to those customers. And the goal is building capability inside so that customers outside get what they want and need.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think those two skill sets are really legitimate for anyone. How do I build the trust? How do I build the relationship? Two, how do I really know the business through the customer's eyes so that I can build an internal capacity, capability, whatever you want to call it, to serve that customer? And it seems like you've intuitively done both of those.
Exactly. And so much of the value in the customer interface comes through the side conversations before the formal meeting starts. When you're getting the coffee and I just slip in a question, how do you feel our team is performing? Where do you think we have the strongest capabilities? And then feeding that information back to the team is also incredibly valuable.
I hope we get that, because Wayne Brockbank, you met him at Michigan.
Of course. Great
Wayne
guy.
claims that 80% of the information in the world, the data, is in those informal conversations. It's not in spreadsheets, it's not in statistics, it's the getting coffee, sitting by somebody at lunch, chatting to somebody as you go throughout the day. And you have the wisdom to ask the right questions with the mindset, I want to build our internal Lego capability to better serve you as a customer. Now, so I become credible, build an activist, build trust too. I know the business well enough to engage with customers. How do you transfer that learning to the next HR folks? You've got it through your experience and your personal skill. How do I transfer that learning to someone else?
Yeah, so it's a work in progress. It really is. And we're looking at...
In addition to sending people to the HR Congress.
Of
Remember,
course.
we were
And
told...
and to Michigan.
And to Michigan, and to Harvard periodically. But Harvard, you go once, you paid for 3 Michigans. So that was bad. That was very bad. By the way, there's all kinds of training. But I'm really curious, how do we get HR folks, and it may be that 20-year-old stereotype that you started with, he or she may not be able to get there. I get that. But how do we get our future generation in that space?
Well, I think the one dimension is to role model and to just, do what I'm doing, based on my commercial experience. Then what I've been doing is more bilaterally, discussing with my direct reports, creating transparency. These were the minutes of the meeting. This is what I think are the capabilities, and making that available. But then I think we have a big job and I think HR could play a role, even though we may not see it as our role, and you guys advocated for this at Michigan as well. We need to build business acumen as a capability within HR. And, that means, formalized training, whether that's classroom or blended or whatever, really getting into the company's P&L, the company's balance sheet, the company's operating model, the company's money-making logic. And that's something I've never experienced HR playing an active role in, but it's something that we're looking at doing starting next year, and we'll see.
Learning the language of the business.
Exactly.
I see, Jonathan, you may have a question. Could I ask a couple?
What can HR learn from the commercial part of the business when it comes to using data and driving the employee experience?
Yeah, good question. And I think this is now the biggest opportunity for HR. I think what excites me most about being in HR at this point in time is that the digital revolution has hit HR. It hit sales years ago, marketing years ago, and now finally there's a lot of VC and a lot of money flowing in, and you see a lot of great apps and technology. So I think the opportunity is finally available now in HR to get more real-time relevant data from the business, about people, about culture, and starting to generate that in real time, react to it, generate insights, and then deliver action. So I think that cadence, that mindset that I was talking about, how do you transition out of this institutionalized, annualized process mindset, is a function of having access to relevant data in a timely manner, and then being able to react to it.
Very good.
And it seems like some of that could get woven into a project management logic. Does that make sense? You're going to hear about that after we're done, because I think the things that you're going to bring to the discussion really provide discipline to make some of that happen and to institutionalize that. So we'll see some of that.
Yeah, just we've got a chance for one question. There must be one burning question, either for Dave or for Loren. And I'd be very, I think it'd be cool. This is sort of the last chance of
There's
the
always
HR Congress.
questions for Dave.
Yeah.
There's got to be.
And I will defer to Loren.
I mean, we've had a lot of stuff. Amy, you must have a question. You've got to have a retort back on the,
Very much. My question is, do you think it's possible, and this is a little bit of a leading question, but to reframe this almost taken for granted idea that HR doesn't get the business, that HR isn't able to sort of approach customers and engage with them in a meaningful way. I mean, we're treating Loren as special, and Loren is special, but I'm just not so sure that frame is true anymore, and partly thanks to you, Dave.
My answer, and I'd love to hear yours, and Amy, I'd love to hear yours. We both have different perspectives. 20-60-20. 20% of the senior HR folks I meet with are in Loren's category. And by the way, we honor you, we value you, we hold you up as an icon. 20% are not going to get there. And by the way, you'd argue, I think it's 15. I'm not going to fight that. But there's a distribution, and it's that stereotype you gave earlier. Don't worry about the company or the person. If you want to find a bad HR person, ask me. I'll help you find one. I'm intrigued, and frankly, you don't need the training. You're good. You got it. You get the framework. You jump ahead. That's the good 20%. The bottom 20%, this training isn't going to help. I'm intrigued with the 60 in the middle. And my optimism is, as I've been around the field for a while, and Amy, I'd love to hear your comments as well, and Lauren, yours, I think the 60% net are getting better. I shared the data in one of the seminars today. We have studied competencies of HR people for 30 years. We've done 7 rounds of data with 90,000 people. In 1987, the HR competence in knowing the business was 3.17 out of 5. That's not very good. In 2017, 30 years later, it was 4.13. 1 point on a 5-point scale is not good, it's breathtaking.
Yeah.
I frankly get really frustrated. The 20% are there. The 20% will never get there. I think the 60% have made enormous progress. And I shared in one group, the comment I make when somebody says, HR's not there, HR's not there, I say, I am so sorry you're working in an old company. Because in my experience, most of that 60% are making progress. That's what our data shows. It's a dramatic increase.
Yeah.
Dramatic. I'd love
Thank
to.
you. Well, Amy, you got a
Well,
comment on-
I completely agree with you just said, what you just said, and I think it's part of our job to keep the narrative moving forward and not to get stuck in the old narrative.
And I'm really sorry, we're just throwing you off stage.
No.
And by the way, there's now 3 of us. And
I know, and I've
by
got
the
a
way, when
flashing
2
zero, and
professors,
we've got Antonio half out of his chair.
I know Antonio's going to speak. I'm about to write something. I love HR. I'm committed to this field. I think HR has value. What are the 4 or 5 pet peeves? One is we can't get over ourselves. We're our own worst enemy. Every time we do a survey, the HR people rate themselves 0.3 to 0.5 lower than everybody else rates them. Stop it. We're fine. We're good. And that's one, that we just can't move forward. And we have to, the metaphor in, somebody was telling me that in some Asian countries, you put lobsters in a bucket. And when the lobster starts to climb out, the other lobsters grab it and pull it back. I sometimes think that's what we do too much of in HR. When we start to see this progress, somebody pulled, well, we're not doing this. This is a great field, and we've made huge progress. Do we have a ways to go? Of course. And folks like you can help each of us create our own story. I mean, my takeaway, Lauren, from you is build credibility, build a relationship. I may not, and how do I do that without 20 years in commercial? That's a very interesting question. Number 2, get to know the business, jump in, go see customers, get to know the income statement, get to know the balance sheet. Number 3, make sure that our HR work is linked to that customer value. By the way, that's now creating my story. And it doesn't have to be 20 years of commercial. I can get there. And I think that's where we go. Anyway, that's a long response. That's one of my pet peeves in the field is, let's move on.
Well, and with that, let's move on.